35s versus 37s for the Jeep Gladiator. In this video, I'm going to go over the pros and cons of each, some important considerations, and my real-world experience with both tire sets. Alright, let's get to it. At a glance, a 37-inch tall tire compared to a 35 doesn't seem like much of a difference. However, when you factor in weight differences, rolling resistance, and the increased contact patch, that seemingly small shift in size can impact the Jeep greatly. Let's first look at tire clearance. For Rubicon and Mojave owners looking to upgrade to a 35-inch tall tire, you can do so easily and without the need of a suspension lift. However, there are two important things to consider. The first applies to those wanting to retain the factory 17-inch wheel. While this wheel can accommodate a 35-inch tall tire, you are better off going with a tire that's 11.5 inches wide over the more common 1250. This is due to the fact that the stock wheel is only 7.5 inches wide. The tire you see here is a 35 by 1150 R17 Nitto Trail Grappler. If you want to make the move to a 35 by 1250, I recommend going with an aftermarket wheel that's slightly wider. A 17 by 9 or 17 by 8.5 would be ideal, but backspacing will be important here as well. A wheel with higher numerical backspacing will keep the tire tucked under the flare more than one with low numerical backspacing. This will reduce potential for rubbing off-road and keep the steering feeling similar to stock. Keep in mind that the factory wheel has approximately 6 inches of backspacing, so every inch you take away, the tire will poke out further from the Jeep. For non-Rubicon and Mojave Gladiators, you will need around 2.5 inches of lift to properly clear a 35 for off-road driving. For those not wanting to do a suspension lift, swapping out the stock fenders for a set of Highline fenders like what's found on the Rubicon and Mojave is always an option, or you can look at aftermarket fender flares that give you some more clearance. If you are trying to clear a 37-inch tall tire but you want the least amount of lift and you have a Mojave or Rubicon, you can do so with just a 1-inch lift and 1-inch front bump stop spacer. This is something that I've tested multiple times with a variety of wheel combinations. A TerraFlex 1.5-inch leveling kit and a Daystar 3/4 inch rear spacer is the absolute least amount of lift I would recommend if you're looking to run a true to size 37-inch tall tire off-road. For non-Rubicon owners, I would recommend at least a 3.5-inch lift unless you are willing to modify your fenders or swap them out with an aftermarket set. If you are just looking to crawl the mall, it is worth noting that I've actually tested 37's with no lift under the Jeep Gladiator Rubicon. I found that it worked fine for driving around town and even on the beach. However, any real suspension flex and it would rub significantly, so I don't recommend this setup. It's also worth noting that the axles under the Rubicon, Mojave, and Gladiator's option with the Max Tow package are all wider. This means if you have the standard width axle set, you're going to need a wheel with a little bit less backspacing to keep the tire away from the frame and suspension components. Now let's jump into off-road performance and how that makes a difference. How much you are looking to challenge your Jeep off-road will make a significant impact in which tire you should go with. If you don't see yourself doing much more than an entry-level trail or a gravel road, a 35 is perfectly fine. However, if you want to use your Jeep on more moderate and challenging trails, I absolutely recommend skipping past the 35 and going with a 37. The taller the lift and the larger the tire, the better the breakover angle will be and the less likely you'll drag the belly off-road. Compared to a 35, a 37 on a 17-inch wheel is going to provide more comfort off-road as the larger sidewall when air down provides a secondary suspension. The ground clearance and traction gains of a 37 also make a noticeable difference over a 35. These are very important features, especially for someone that's going to wheel in either muddy or rocky terrain. If you are looking to run a full-size spare, you need to know that you have right at 36.5 inches to work with in the factory location. 37, however, I found that most true to size ones will rub the rear track bar. Now, you can get an aftermarket track bar that will give you increased tire clearance, so that is absolutely an option. If you do plan on doing a lot of off-roading with the Jeep, however, I would recommend relocating the spare tire to a different spot. Another factor here is weight. No matter if you plan on hitting the trail or just daily driving, the weight of the tire is extremely important. Every pound you add to your Jeep makes an impact on the performance, and that is especially true with unsprung weight. The difference between a 35 and a 37 in terms of weight can be fairly dramatic depending on the tire. The stock Gladiator 285s that come on the Rubicon weigh around 50 pounds each. Moving up to a 37 can easily add 35 pounds per tire. This is going to make a sizable impact on fuel economy, braking, and acceleration. Speaking of performance, the one area I get asked about frequently is differential gearing. Most of my Gladiator experience has been with the 3.6 liter V6 backed by the 8-speed automatic. With the 410 differential gear, I have found that the 35-inch tall tire works perfectly fine. You can still retain overdrive gearing, and the power difference isn't enough between the stock size tire and a 35 to really warrant a gear change. Moving to a 37, however, I have found that the Gladiator benefits greatly from a higher numerical gear set. Will it work with 37s and 410 gears? Yes, but the tire's rolling resistance, weight, and your location will all play a major role in determining if that setup will work for you. I've used 488 differential gears with 37s, and I've found them to be very adequate in the coastal plains of North Carolina where I live. However, if I lived in a place with more elevation or did more interstate driving, I think a 513 differential gear would be the better option. Now, if your Jeep did not come with the stock 410 differential gears, I still don't think you'll have an issue with a 35, especially if it's on the lighter side. My last note on this is if you are truly trying to optimize the performance and fuel economy of your Gladiator, regardless if you go with a 35 or a 37, matching the right gear set with that tire is going to make a difference. Part of this equation is going to be the tread pattern of the tire, and this is something I do not want to overlook. Not only are we talking about the tire weight, but the pattern itself. So think of it like this. Getting a tire with a less aggressive tread is going to equate to less rolling resistance. This is going to impact the Jeep's fuel economy greatly. Tires such as the Nitto Recon Grappler AT are designed to not only roll smoother, but more quietly compared to a traditional mud terrain. I also want to touch on axle strength here. As of making this video, all Jeep Gladiators come with Dana 44 axles. Yes, there are some significant variances between different models, that being cast iron knuckles and thicker tubes, but in my opinion, they're all capable of handling up to a 37-inch tall tire. The big takeaway more than anything is that Jeep did a great job of fitting the Gladiator with massive wheel wells. There's no question that the truck looks better with larger tires and performs much better off-road. Yes, a 35-inch tall tire is by far the more practical and easier way to go. The 37 is going to require a larger investment on your part to do it right. Ultimately, it comes down to how much you feel you're going to off-road your Gladiator and what the look is you're going for. It's a small difference between the two, but I do think that it's worth truly considering out what all of your options are. I personally like a 37 under the Gladiator platform, and in some cases, even a 38. Well, hopefully this video cleared things up a little bit and will make your tire buying decision a little bit easier. If you have any questions, just drop them in the comments. If you want to see what I'm working on behind the scenes, feel free to check me out on Instagram at Ollie Mansour Editor. Until then, I appreciate you guys watching, and I hope to see you on the trail. Take care. Thanks for sticking around to the end. Hopefully you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please consider subscribing to the Driving Line channel. Our goal is to excite, entertain, and educate you on all things automotive. So if you want to come be part of our journey, please hit that subscribe button, and we hope to see you on the next video. Take care.